Welcome back everyone to another YouTube video. Today, we're going to be talking about Dark One: The Forgotten. So, Dark One: The Forgotten is a book that got on my radar because it's co-written by Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells. Obviously, I've read quite a bit of Sanderson, but I haven't had a whole lot of exposure to Dan Wells. I've seen him and Sanderson on a podcast together quite a bit, and I've listened to his audio on Moonbreaker, but beyond that, I haven't read any of his works, and I was really interested to try him out. So, I thought I'd dive into this. I haven't had any exposure to the Dark One comic yet, and I'm really interested in that, especially after reading this book. I'm even more interested in the Dark One comic. Hopefully the graphic novel continues, and I can read more of it. I think there's only one issue out currently, but I will be looking into that very soon. So this book is good. There are a couple times I considered stopping. There are some parts that really just were very cringy. Some of the dialogue was rough, but the concepts and the ending really made it worth it. I'm glad I kept with it. Christina, the protagonist, is fine. She's a protagonist. I think she's a little dramatic and info-dumpy, especially towards the beginning, but I think she gets better as it goes. Her best friend, Sophie, on the other hand, I don't have as nice of things to say about. Sophie is obnoxious. She's really rude, and she treats people horribly. Any person they approach around them, she will immediately make a snarky comment about them and belittle them and assume the worst in them. And it's just, I think that they were going for a Sam from iCarly kind of vibe, but Sophie isn't actually funny, so it didn't really work at all, for me at least. She's just mean. She's just mean. And it doesn't change throughout it. She doesn't have a character arc, really. She's not any nicer at the end than she was at the beginning. And she thinks that she's very funny. And I'm not saying that she's not a very realistic character, because I have met people like her before. And so, props to that. There are people like her out there. They're just not people I want to spend time around. The performances in this audio drama range from excellent to mediocre. There are some really, really, really top tier ones. I really liked, for example, the cultist expert, the guy that knew all about cults. I felt like he was a really real character. But there were also some other characters that felt like they were phoning it in, or maybe they just didn't quite fit the character quite as well. But there are times when I think the dialogue does hold back some of these actors as well. The dialogue can be very cringe at sometimes. There's so much cringe. And maybe that's just a millennial looking at Gen Zs, or maybe it's a millennial looking at Gen Zs written by a Gen X. And then there are limits to an audio drama as well. The action scenes got a bit confusing, especially at the ending. There were parts where like the antagonist had to like explain, we are here and here and here. Oh, I have brought you here. And I'm like, this is kind of jarring. This is really jarring. But for the most part, I think that the audio drama actually really worked for this. It really did kind of suit what I was listening to, and I enjoyed the unique take on it. I don't know, maybe audio dramas just aren't really my style of media consumption though, because both this and the original I wasn't a huge fan of. I think this is better than the original though, personally. But maybe audio dramas just aren't really my thing. I need to listen to more to kind of test out the waters a bit more, because I've only listened to Sanderson done audio dramas, so I should try some different ones as well. Maybe I'll try Sandman. So one of my biggest issues with the book is it took far too long for it to get to the point where the magic was at play. Because us, the readers, we know there's going to be magic. It's written by Sanderson. I don't think he's ever written anything that didn't have a supernatural element to it. But it takes like 2/3 of the way before we actually get to the point where it's magic. where we're actually exploring this magic. And I think that is too long. While the research is really interesting at times, it can also be slogs at other times. When they're actually doing the research, I think, when they're talking about cultists and they're talking about the pharmaceutical medications, I think that stuff is actually pretty interesting and engaging, even though they are kind of tangents from the main plot. But there's a lot of just them explaining what they found to someone else, that they found it to someone else, and there's just a lot of telephone kind of being played that just isn't that interesting, and that's where the slog really lies within this book. I think they could have cut at least an hour out of this audio drama, which is pretty significant since it's only 6 hours long. But the curse was fascinating. I have never seen something quite like that before. I think it was very, very interesting. It was engaging, intriguing. So I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers here, talking about it. So if you don't want to listen to that, you can just dip. No worries at all. 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So the curse was causing everyone around you to lose their memory of you. And there are instances of this within other medias a bit, but I've never seen it quite done this way. In Kingdom Hearts, you have memory loss. In One Piece, you have memory loss. You have it all over the place. The memory loss is only about you, and it affects everyone else in the world. It feels like something that would be in a Black Mirror episode, and it was really, really intriguing. I really loved it. I've never seen a superpower quite like that, or a magic quite like that, and I think it could lend itself into some really interesting things. And it did in this book. We saw her break into a police station and walk out with no repercussions whatsoever. The last third of the book, it just felt like I was listening to an old Twilight Zone episode that was broadcast on the radio. It was really good. In the end, I think this book accomplished what it set out to do. I'm not really interested in seeing these characters again, but I am interested in seeing this world again. And I think that's what's important, because it got me interested in reading The Dark One. And it got me interested in reading whatever is to follow. I'm interested to see what happened to the main character's father. And I think that in a future installment, we would. And I think that maybe even in Dark One, we already have discovered. I'm gonna take a look pretty soon and find out for myself. But that's my little review. If I had to give it an arbitrary number, I'd maybe give it a 5 out of 10. There were good parts, there are bad parts, and I think it evens out to a 50-50. I think it's worth reading, but if you're not interested in Twilight Zone, Black Mirror sort of things, then I think it should be lower on your TBR. That's all I have for today. I'm gonna see you in the next one. Thanks again for tuning in. See ya. Bye-bye.